Hi everyone, Grandmaster Ben Finegold. I want to show you my game from round 5 of the 2017 St. Louis Winter Classic. Unfortunately, I'm going to be deleting most comments from now on because they're getting crazier. I'm not going to get rid of comments, but if your comment's crazy, it's going to be deleted. I was leaving some crazy comments, but I don't know why. So, my channel. And most of the comments are crazy, more than 50%. So, if your comment's not deleted, you're not crazy. That's proof. You can show any doctor, and I'll back it up. Okay. Unfortunately, as I was making this video the first time, I stopped after about a minute because the PGN's wrong, and I actually went to 2 different sites, and the PGN's wrong, and I can't change it very easily. I'd have to do some work, so I'll change it later, but not during the video. This is my game against Grandmaster Rambaldi. Now, what happened was he played Bishop b4, and I played Queen c2, which is the Nimzo-Indian. And he played d5. But the PGN says d5, queen c2, bishop b4. But that's not what happened. So what actually happened was bishop b4, queen c2, d5. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. So we got this position. I didn't know what he would play, if he would even play the Nimzo-Indian or anything. He plays like 5 different ways against d4. Okay, so d5 you take. They can take all 3 ways on d5, and pawn takes is the most common. You can also play a3 in this position. And here, I think everybody I've ever played has played h6, so that's the most common move. And after h6, you can take the knight or play bishop h4, and I've played them both. And my opponent played c5, which I've never faced. The testing move against that is to take it, and then sometimes white even castles queenside, putting pressure on the d5 pawn and unpinning the knight. And usually, and I've had this position with the insertion of the moves h6 and bishop h4. So he played c5 quickly, so obviously it's his prep, and I have never faced it before. So I tried to play the most boring way because I'm pretty good at boring chess, but not at theoretical, exciting stuff. So I played e3. That's probably one of my worst moves of the game. After e3, the computer even prefers black's position, although it's probably equal. That doesn't really fight for an advantage, letting black play c5 easily. He thought a long time because nobody really plays e3. All right, so he traded and played knight c6, threatening my pawn. I pinned his knight. He unpinned his knight, and I defended my pawn with knight e2, which makes sense, and he played queen b6. The computer thinks if I take on f6 and he takes on b5 that this is an equal position, although I prefer black here, 2 bishops. And I like my bishop on g5 because it's always threatening to mess up his pawns. So I played bishop takes c6, and if he takes with a pawn, then I can mess up his pawn structure because his queen will be blocked. The computer wants him to take on c3 here, and I'm assuming the reasoning is if I take with the queen, then knight e4 is probably good. That's my guess. But yeah, I don't see why black's better here. It seems like I could just take, and then I could either castle or play bishop takes f6. So black's definitely not better here. I don't know why the computer says black's better here. That's just wrong. Okay, so that doesn't make a lot of sense, but okay, he played queen takes, which makes a lot of sense. And I played a3. a3 is important, I think, because it's not clear what he should do. If he doesn't pin my knight, then I can play something like bishop takes f6, and if his queen takes, I have a pawn on d5 to take, although I can't take that pawn right now because my knight's pinned. And again, the computer wants him to do this, which just seems like white's a little better, it's equal, but the computer says black's a little better. So, not sure why. Even like in this position, it somehow thinks that black is better, but I think white's better. So, all right. Anyway, so he played bishop e7, which makes sense, and I castled. h6, bishop e6, and this is about equal. Rook e1's okay. At some point, he has to play g5 because I'm going to play knight f4, and then he has some issues on the e file. Well, now I can't play knight f4. Okay, and he played knight e4. He thought maybe I should play f3 here to keep his knight out of e4. Maybe. Okay. Rook ac1's good. Okay, and now I had my longest think of the game and played one of my worst moves. So the correct move I played later, but not when it was as good. I should play bishop e5 here. The problem in my position is my knight on e2 has nowhere to go. So if my bishop wasn't on g3, I could play knight g3. So I should play bishop e5. And the idea is eventually I'll play knight g3. And if his knight's not on e4, if he trades knights or something, he can never play f6 to kick my bishop out because I have queen g6 check. So if he plays f6 now I go back to g3. And the idea is now when I play f3 and kick his knight out, his bishops aren't protected very much. So I'm forcing f6, which weakens, the e-file. If he plays f5 to trap my bishop, then I go back to e5. Then he could go back to f6 and offer a draw, but that's illegal. Now my bishop just sits on e5. And again, I could play f3 and kick his knight out, and bishop on e5 is great. So bishop e5 is the right move. Computer says it's equal. I played a terrible move. I was trying to move my queen so that my knight on c3 wasn't pinned, and I would be threatening discovered attacks. And I couldn't find a good square for my queen. So I kept looking at queen d3 and queen b3 and queen d1, and finally I settled on queen b1, which is just bad. Not a good move. And he played knight d2, which is correct, and then to c4. And I just can't do anything here. My knight I can't move like any of my pieces. And he has the two bishops, and he can build on the king side or the queen side. He can attack my b2 pawn. I can't move my b2 pawn because my a3 pawn hangs. So I just have a lot of problems here. Okay, so I played bishop e5, and I thought if he took my bishop and I take back, then my knight has this nice d4 square, and his king side's a little weakened. I have f5. Okay, so he played queen d7, which is the best move according to the engine. Wants to play bishop f5 and kick me out. I played rook to d1 because if my queen moves away, he can never play knight d2, and if he ever takes my bishop, I want to take with a pawn, and my rook is opposite his queen, and he can't play d4. Otherwise, like if it was his move here, he might take my bishop and then play d4. Okay, and he did attack my queen, and I moved it. And he played f6, and I saved my bishop. He played rook e8, and again, I couldn't find a move. I can't move anything. And then I had this idea, which doesn't work, to play this knight to a2 and this knight to c3. And then I realized I could just put my knight on c1 and go to a2, and then it's the same thing. And the idea is I want to leave my knight on c3, so if this knight ever moves, I have pressure on d5. And I'd like to play knight a2 to b4 and put pressure on the d5 pawn. Okay. Also, I could play knight d3 in the right moment, but not after his move. He played bishop f8. Always play bishop f8. And now knight d3 leaves my pieces hanging and my rook hanging and stuff. So if I play here, for example, I think this just wins the game. I can't take his bishop because rook takes rook mate. And if I trade rooks first, that doesn't matter. I still get mated. Okay, but I wasn't intending on playing knight to d3. Okay, so he played bishop f8. I played my knight to a2. I would like to play knight b4, and then I have a lot of pressure on d5. So he stopped knight b4 with a5. And I played a4, so now I control the b5 square. Played b6, which probably isn't great, but it's okay, but probably not the best. I played h3, so I had some lift. Forget about those back rank make tricks. King g7, getting off of this diagonal. We're getting into mild time trouble here. Rook c1, now I want to challenge the open file. And he didn't really increase his advantage here. The computer says he's up like 0.4, 0.5. He has the two bishops. He has the knight on c4. My knight on a2 is silly, but he didn't do anything here. And now he said after the game he missed queen b5. Although I thought I'd play knight b5, but queen b5 is better. Yeah, now it looks like I've equalized because my pieces aren't so bad anymore. He thought a while and he traded. And the computer actually likes all our moves. Rook c8 I didn't see. I thought I was getting the advantage because I'm infiltrating with my rook on c6 or c7. My knight's going to c7, but he just stopped everything. And we both had less than 5 minutes here. So these moves are actually the computer moves. So can't complain. I finally listened to myself from the previous game, and I moved my king into the game, king g1. And here I should probably move my king again, but I played knight d3. I was in time trouble. And moved my knight back to a2. And then king f1, king e2, and time control. Hooray! I didn't lose on time. Tried to. Okay, my bishop's attacked on b6, so I played bishop c5, and he traded. And the computer says it's equal, but we're both still trying to win. He played knight b2, and attacking my pawn. Problem is, it looks like I can just defend my pawn, like for example, knight here, but this is a very nice trick. Knight takes a4, then I lose everything. Well, I lose a pawn. I'll lose the game. So I played knight d4, and the idea is if he takes my pawn, I play knight c3, and this d5 pawn is indefensible. And again, this should probably be a draw. And he played bishop e8, because he wants to take on a4 with his knight, and then he's up a pawn. If I play knight c3 with the intention of taking his d5 pawn, he takes my c5 pawn. I'm still down a pawn. Okay, so I played knight to b3, which is the right move, attacking his a5 pawn. And when he takes, I can't take on a5 because he takes on c5. But I don't have to take on a5 because he can't defend his a5 pawn. So I played king e3. And in a very deep analysis, which took me a while to understand, the computer wants me to play g3. And the reason is funny. After king e3, he should play the brilliant move h5. And you'll see why in a second. In the game, my opponent tried to play on the king side and take all my king side pawns, but that doesn't work because I played g3, h4. However, if he plays h5 to preface that, I can't stop him from playing h4, and then he can play bishop b5, bishop f1. Also, when he wins a pawn on the king side, his pawn's closer to queening, so h5, h4 is just a really ingenious idea. And again, we're getting into time trouble again. So he played bishop b5, which I expected, because I thought he would play bishop f1. But he should play h5 first. Okay, g3, bishop c4 attacking my knight, so I play knight c1, then bishop f1. And the only way for black to try to win is to play a double-edged way, which is to take my h-pawn. Then he has a passed h-pawn, but he's losing a lot of tempi. He's not stopping my c-pawn. He's not defending the center. So that's a really risky way of playing, but if he wants to win, he wants to win. So that's what he did. And computer says maybe white's better now, even though I'm down a pawn, because my c-pawn's pretty strong. After the game, he thought he should play knight c8 here, but the computer always prefers white slightly. Knight e7, king g5, wants to push his h-pawn. Knight d3, h5, knight c5, and he has to move his bishop. And now I played knight a4, so I was playing for a win. And I was really surprised here. I thought he was going to play knight check, and then knight to d6. And the computer says white's better here, but probably a draw. Ooh, I have a phone call. Let's see. Yeah, I guess I'll call her back. All right. That was you, wifey. Okay, so probably this is a draw, but I think white has a little advantage according to the engine. He shocked me because he took my knight, and I didn't think he could do that. I thought I'm queening now. And the funny thing is I only looked at moves where he was moving his knight trying to stop my pawn, but his knight is stopping my pawn because he has knight b6 next move. So I was like shocked that he took my knight on a4. Then he played h4. Okay. So now if I move my knight off of c8, he plays knight b6. Okay. So again, we're both still playing for a win. I played knight e7. He has to play knight b6. And it turns out every move is a draw. I could play king f3 to stop his h-pawn. Then he has a passed d-pawn and a passed h-pawn. I wasn't sure who was better there. The computer says nobody's better. I played king d4. And one way to play for a win is to throw in f4 at some point. And the idea is if he plays the obvious king g4, in these variations that follow, I queen would check, gaining a tempo for me. But in any case, the computer still says it's a draw. So, because that's not really helping me. The reason is black queens first in all the variations. So if he queens and I queen would check, it's still a draw. Okay, so king d4, I could still play f4 check. And the idea is if he takes it, I play knight takes d5 check. Okay. Again, everything's going to be queen and knight versus queen, which is a draw, but at least I have an extra knight. I played here, and I didn't see his next move. I thought he was going to play h2. I thought he would queen, and then he could win my f-pawn, and I try to win. Queen and knight versus queen and 2 pawn. It's a draw, but I'll try to win. And instead, he played a better move, knight c8. And the reason that's better is instead of me taking his knight with my king stays on c5. So now he just trades queens. So now it's just an easy draw. And my king's not on b6, so he can trade queens. And he already had calculated that he wins my f-pawn. Now, of course, I can save my f-pawn if he plays king f3, but it doesn't matter because f5 still draws, and this is a draw. But he played f5, so I can't even play knight e4. And if I take the f5 pawn, he can either play king f3 and draw, which is funny, or he could take my knight and then go win my pawn. I'm not. Ooh, I went all the way back to the beginning. That's a little crazy. Okay. Okay. So, I wonder why I did that. Okay. So everything draws, and he played f5, and I played king d4, and this was the final position. So it turns out nobody was ever winning. Probably at the best, he was up maybe 0.6, 0.7 at the absolute peak of his advantage in the middle game. And the computer says I'm up like 1.1 because it sees that I'll have queen and knight against queen and pawn, but that's just a theoretical draw. In fact, you can table base those positions with 6 and 7 piece table bases. It'll just tell you it's a draw. It doesn't even give an evaluation, just says draw or win because it knows. So that was a very tough game for me because I was worse most of the game. As Yasser said to me after the game, I seized the defensive. That's one of his favorite phrases. Yeah, I was defending pretty early on, which I sort of like to do. I like for my opponent overpresses. And he didn't overpress, but at some point I had the advantage because he overpressed. He overpressed, but he actually didn't think he did during the game. He thought that's the way to play. I agree. If you want to win, you can't just do nothing. So he got a passed h-pawn, and that gave us both winning chances. So that game was 5 hours long. Today I'm white against Alejandro Ramirez. Our game starts in 2 hours. And I don't know what the opening will be because Alejandro and I play everything. So it'll probably be a surprise to both of us. I've never played Alejandro a rated game before. We've played some blitz chess. We're doing commentary next week for the U.S. Championship together for the live commentary. If you want to watch us, you have to come to St. Louis. If you don't want to watch us, then you can watch on the internet, uschesschamps.com, and you can watch Jennifer, Maurice, and Yasser. But if you want to watch me and Alejandro, you got to come to St. Louis. If you already live here, that makes it easier. I highly recommend, if you make one trip every year to St. Louis, to come to the U.S. Championship, also the U.S. Women's Championship. There'll be 24 of the best players in the country here, live commentary in the internet, live commentary here at Kingside Diner with me and Alejandro, grandmasters everywhere, world-class players like Wesley So, Hikaru Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana, and it's just a great time for everybody. So maybe I'll see some of you guys in a week or two. Until then, this is Grandmaster Ben Finegold. Please like and subscribe. Please leave your crazy comments so I can delete. Gives me something to do. And follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Bye, everyone.